I tell my money coaching clients all the time that if their health isn't right, it doesn't matter how great their money is, they won't be able to make the most of it. Mental health is something that doesn't get anywhere near enough attention. It impacts so many areas of our lives and deserves to always be a focus. That's why I couldn't be more excited to welcome licensed marriage and family therapist Dr. Jamila Holcomb to the show today. Jamila and I are going to talk about how women can stop people pleasing and start prioritizing their own happiness, and how their mental health will benefit as a result. As we look to close out another year, make sure you're starting the next one with a renewed sense of self-love and worthiness.
Hey there, I'm Rhea Reeves, and over a decade ago, I turned my life around through budgeting. I went from being an overspender deep in credit card debt to being the founder and full-time money coach of City Girl Savings. Now, I help women work towards their dream life and tap into their financial power one budget at a time. I fully believe you can live a life you love with a budget, and I'm living proof. The weekly City Girl Savings podcast focuses on the intersection of money and the City Girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial.
Dr. Jamila Holcomb is a licensed marriage and family therapist and approved supervisor in the state of Florida. She's been providing mental health services to individuals and families since 2013. In addition to her therapy practice, Jamila is part of the teaching faculty at Florida State University, mentoring future generations on their unique journey to making systemic changes that benefit our collective mental, physical, and relational health. Hi, Jamila. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited for this conversation because I know how much my City Girl Savings community members will benefit from this. I was hoping, though, before we really dive in, can you share just a little bit about your background and how you got into your practice?
Sure. Well, yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for our conversation today. Well, in addition to what you said in the introduction, I'm a Black cisgender heterosexual woman. I've been married for about 8.5 years. I have 3 beautiful children, a 6-year-old and 3-year-old twins. So my hands are full all of the time, which allows me to know a little bit about the topic that we're going to talk about today. But professionally, I've been a therapist now for over 10 years, which is crazy to say. I've always gravitated wanting to help others. I just thought I wanted to help children in a medical setting. So I always thought I was going to be a pediatrician. Quickly learned that that wasn't going to work out. I feel like that's a common dream for a child, right? Is I'm going to be a doctor. And I did, in fact, become a doctor, but just not a medical one. Yeah, taking psychology classes in undergrad really helped me see that, yes, I wanted to help children, but more so in strengthening family relationships. And so after pursuing my master's in marriage and family therapy and then going to get my doctorate, pretty much my whole focus throughout those years were working with children, working with family. So doing a lot of parenting work and then just working in community settings. And so getting a lot of exposure to trauma, a lot of exposure to high stress situations, a lot of exposure to larger systems that are just not functioning well to best support our families. And so I realized I'm going to get burnt out pretty quickly doing this work because it's heavy. It's very overwhelming. And so one of the things that I've tried to do throughout my career thus far is just create enough balance for myself. And so I do the direct service still in my private practice, but I also teach at a university just as a way to broaden my systemic impact. And then I also do consulting and supervising, therapist in training. And so I feel like that just gives me a really good balance so that I'm tackling still my same goal of helping others and really just like my overall goal of collective healing and liberation from a lot of different angles.
I I love that. It's so funny. A handful of my money coaching clients are actually therapists. And I feel like the mental fortitude anybody in that profession needs to kind of show up every single day and do the work you do, it's incredibly commendable.
Which is why we need you, because we do not have the mental capacity for financial conversations or budgeting. And it's just not something that's really talked about in our field. So I love this collaboration that we've got going on because it's a winning team.
Oh, definitely. And, hearing a little bit more about kind of the personal side of your life too. I mean, you juggle a lot of things, and I feel like most women do. So I think having your experience and kind of finding that balance as best you can is going to be so great for this conversation. But I think a big thing is many women struggle with people pleasing, and I think they struggle with it without even realize they're doing it. So I'm curious, from a therapist perspective, what are some subtle signs that someone may be stuck in this people pleasing pattern? And I think awareness is the first step to change. So what are some of those signs that women can look for?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny because they're really not that subtle, but you're right. Like, they are often overlooked or given an explanation for something else, right? I'm tired, or, something else might be going on. We don't look at the cause being people pleasing, but kind of a sign of, am I people pleasing? Is that what's going on for me? Is if we really struggle with our ability to say no, right? Even when we know that taking on a new task puts our own health at risk, right? We say like, oh, I know I don't have the capacity for that, but I feel like I have to do it. Otherwise, I might let somebody down. That is kind of a classic sign of people pleasing, or where you're like, I really don't want to do it, but you still do it anyways. Yeah. Those are kind of the internal checks and balances we have to have with ourselves. Say like, am I being guided by my own wants and needs here, or what I think other people want or what they expect from me? And so people who people please, right, are often going to feel overwhelmed. They're going to feel exhausted. Another common feeling is like irritability and feeling resentful, right? And so there's like, on one hand, you feel like you have to put yourself in this position, or you may even think that you want to put yourself in this position. Like, I'm just a people person. But the backhand is that you're irritable for being in the position. You might be frustrated at yourself for always putting your needs aside. And it leads to deep-seated resentment that really takes a toll on our mental health long term. I mean, gosh, we're talking about like disruptions in our sleep, somatic symptoms, right? Headaches, stomach aches, just muscle pain. And then really, I want to hone in on the irritability, because I feel like that's a common symptom that is prescribed to women, right? They're irritable, they're angry, they're always have an attitude. And I really think there's something to say about it being connected to us overextending ourselves, of being pulled in all of these directions that leads to the irritability.
I would definitely agree with that from my own experience, but I would love to hear your thoughts on identifying those patterns when it comes to maybe your family, your kids, your partner, your friends, right? I think we can, as women, feel guilty for saying no to those people specifically, not only because we actually care about them, right? But because we don't want to let them down. And so I think in the workplace or with business, saying yes to all the things when we know we shouldn't makes perfect sense. I think when it comes to like family and relationships, it might be harder to spot that and let go of that guilt. What would you say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're hitting on like the ways in which women are often socialized, right? Like, we're socialized to be caretakers. We're socialized to prioritize other people's needs. And so with our family, with our friends, we often feel like that's our role. Yeah. And then depending on our various identities, we might have taken on that role to another level, right? Like, I'm also an eldest daughter. And so I can relate to that being part of my responsibilities, right? In terms of just taking care of your siblings and kind of making sure everybody in the household is good. So as women, we've been socialized to take on this role. And so it makes it even more challenging with the people that we love to step back because it feels like we're abandoning our job, right? Or it feels like we're going to hurt the people that we care about most. I think a lot of us are like, all right, screw capitalism. Like if my job falls short here, that's okay. But I think you're speaking to something that maintains people pleasing, is that we really don't want to let the people that we love down. But here's the cost, though, is that we end up letting ourselves down. Right? I know. And like that feels like a sacrifice that we have to make as women, but we can't. We can't. It's not a sacrifice that is sustainable, and it's not one truly that is going to put us in our best selves, right, for ourselves, or allow us to be our best selves for the people that we care about.
Oh, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And where do you think these tendencies come from? Like, is it, ingrained in our family? Is it ingrained in society? Is it cultural expectations or something else entirely? Like, where are these behaviors and thoughts about ourselves learned from?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like so many places, right? Because I think we like to blame our childhoods for a lot, right? Like we like to say like, oh, that's from my childhood or from my parents. And certainly I won't deny that that could be one origin, right? Just like learned behavior or patterns that we've learned within our family system, or like I said earlier, based on our identities, oldest daughter, or whatever the case may be, you might be placed into that role. And so it becomes familiar. But I was trained as a marriage and family therapist to really think systemically. So to expand my view. So yes, the family, but also people pleasing is going to be an outcome of systemic structures that benefit from women taking on this unpaid labor. Right? Yes. I'm like, oh, that's a tough reality to sit with, right?
Yeah.
So like name the patriarchal system that benefits from women taking care of others and putting our needs aside. That's really where we've learned this from.
Oof.
Yes. And so then it's going to be compounded based on our different identities and lived experiences, right? So the patriarchal structure is the larger umbrella, and then all of our unique experiences are going to make that even more of a chance that we become a people pleaser. So for an example, like a Black woman like myself, I may learn to people please based on my different identities as, like I said, firstborn daughter, high achieving, just other characteristics that I have. I guess wanting to be a therapist, a helper, like already, right? Just naturally, but also as a means of survival. Right. Mm-hmm. Recognizing that like somebody who is in my skin color, right, are often labeled as angry. Mm-hmm. Or disagreeable. And so then an overcompensation on my part to be a team player and to be happy and smiley and always raise my hand and offer to help. And that then sets me up to be a people pleaser, right? And then on the other hand, just as another example, white women may learn people pleasing based on their socialization in this patriarchal society, right? And that it benefits your husbands, it benefits other systems, religious institutions, right? For women to take on that unpaid labor of, sacrificing our needs and taking care of children, taking care of the household, taking care of all of the life management things. Yeah, to the detriment of our health.
Absolutely. It's a harsh reality to kind of sit with and accept, but it's the truth, and awareness is the first step to change. I just think not only do we have these kind of maybe internal kind of systems that we can navigate to stop people pleasing, but we have these systemic systems that we also have to figure out how to break free from, with people who may not be ready to break free from them, right? Giving you the side eye, giving you the judgment. It's like another level, another layer to really putting yourself first. And that can be scary.
Absolutely. And it's scary, and it's not going to be celebrated by society, right? Because it's going against the grain. It's going what we think women's role should be. So it's like you said, it's going to come up with a lot of conflict and hard moments.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that our conversation here, anyone who's listening, is feeling empowered to power through that because it will be worth it, right? I mean, I think we only have our one life here and we only have ourselves, right? At the end of the day. So we got to put ourselves first. But I can tell you that a lot of women in the City Girl Savings community have so many focuses. I mean, myself, just hearing your story, but like they're focused on their family, their careers, their money, their goals, their health, all of these things. And so, can you walk us through how over time people pleasing can impact a woman's mental health or anyone's mental health and even our sense of identity? And I know we've kind of touched on this, but like getting to the point where you realize that you actually have to do things differently to get a different result and feeling encouraged to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yes, the compounding of all of the things that we're doing takes a huge toll. And I often hear people say things like, oh, I just wish I could have a break or just time to breathe or I need a vacation. Or those are also the kind of classic signs. And we talked about earlier, like maybe some of those subtle signs. If you constantly feel tired or that you need a break or you need a vacation from your life, that could be another signal that you are just being pulled way too thin. And so that's your like internal alarm clock that says, hey, time to make space for you, right? Maybe you've forgotten you've put all of these other things first. Maybe it's time to focus on you, right? Because we truly do spend all of our days worried about what other people need. And so as it relates to a sense of identity, when we're doing that, even if it's things that we love, because I find this for myself, like, I love all the jobs that I have, right? Like personally and professionally. And so it feels like, what do you mean giving them up or not spending enough time here? Like that feels like a loss. But when I really sit down and look at all of that, I've lost myself in these roles, right? I've lost my own likes and my dislikes, what makes me happy. Yes, maybe it is in service to others, but like you said, it comes at a great cost. And so at minimum, that should be the encouragement that women, that anybody has to say like, ooh, I don't want to lose these parts of me. These parts of me are important too. And I deserve to embrace these and embody these a lot more than I currently do.
Yeah. And I mean, exactly what you've described, I've felt myself, but maybe it's my own like belief in myself or of myself that I just have to power through or I just have to do it just because like who else is going to do it or no one's going to do it as good as me or I can't let so-and-so down or like they're counting on me. How can someone take that first step to be okay with saying no? Like, yes, now we've recognized, we're aware this is definitely, a people-pleasing issue, but how do I take that step forward to start changing it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what we're here for, right? The empowerment. Like, okay, now what? Because yes, I know that I do this, but now what? Right. And I always recommend, like, whether it's for my clients or for myself, to start small. So if we're thinking about, we're having to unlearn not only patterns that you may have participated in your whole life, but patterns that are often reinforced by society, right? So this is like a deep unlearning process. So starting small and being very kind to yourself along the way. So one of the things that I would suggest is making a list of all of the things that you would love to get back to. So the things that you're like, if I had more time, I would do blah, 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 right? And so make that list, your more time list, and pick a few that you feel like you could do right now with relatively little restructuring, right? That wouldn't cause a lot of anxiety, that doesn't kind of disrupt your nervous system just yet, right? Just because as you're tackling those activities, you will start feeling reconnected to yourself. And that will be the ignition for you to tackle some of those harder no's, some of those harder conversations, some of those harder boundaries that you may have to set. That gets the ball rolling for those.
I love that. That's such a good idea. And so in 2023, my mom was in the end stages of a terminal illness. And so after work and business and like being with her and my uncle and my brother and stuff, I would like put on a show from my childhood and just kind of like mindlessly like check out. But I feel like if I had a list of, if I had more time for this, And maybe even half the time I spent mindlessly watching TV, I spent working on that list. I may have felt better. It doesn't take away the fact that whatever we're going through, it's a lot, right? Like, and there's not always a way around that, but feeling reconnected with yourself, I mean, that is, I feel, a big part of pushing out that burnout or not feeling that burnout so aggressively when we're in the day-to-day routines.
Absolutely. And I love that you said it's not even like, hey, throughout the whole show, right? It's like, yes, mindlessly watch that show, but just half of that time, could you look at the list and maybe tackle one thing on there? Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And so I feel like we kind of touched on this, but I have zero doubt that there is a connection between people pleasing and burnout, right? And so how can constantly saying yes to everybody but yourself drain us mentally, emotionally, physically? Like, I really want listeners to understand like just how critical it is that people pleasing is taking a toll on so many areas of a person's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we throw around that like metaphor of the cup, right? Like you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's exactly what people pleasing does, right? It's pour and pour and pour until you have nothing left to pour, right? And so there's nothing left in your cup. But then in fact, people pleasers also give the cup, right? And so then you're truly left with nothing. We're talking about burnout. We're talking about just, you're getting the crumbs, right? You have nothing. You are just run to the ground, exhausted, probably very anxious, on edge. Yeah, it's just not a great place to be. Often then we internalize that something is wrong with us. Like, I wouldn't be feeling this burnt out if I did X, Y, and Z. And so then it just kind of compounds the burnout because we then are spinning our wheels to try to figure out how we can not be burnt out in ways that are not actually restorative.
Oof.
Yeah. So
that's big.
Yeah. More people pleasing doesn't actually help our people pleasing cycle, but we often think it does.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's almost like you said, kind of looking for that solution to beating your burnout, but you're looking in the wrong places. So you're just burning yourself out even faster.
And then being critical of yourself. How come other people can do this and I can't?
Right.
And so then we add in the guilt and the shame. I should be able to do this. And it all just keeps digging that burnout hole even deeper. So that's why the awareness and then the kind of small steps can help pull us out so we're not just spinning our wheels.
You made a comment and it made me wonder, do you think people pleasers, I don't want to say have an issue with self-worth, but like, do you think self-worth plays a role in this like need to get everything done and make everyone happy and just like spin all the plates? Like, do you think that there is an aspect of self-worth, whether it's a lack of self-worth or trying to prove yourself? Do you think that plays a role in this?
Absolutely. For all of those different scenarios that you just described, right? So our self-worth can be tied up into people pleasing because we think that other people validate our self-worth. Right? So if people like me, then that means that I'm good, right? If I'm a reliable, dependable person, that means that I'm good, right? And so we're getting all of the validation externally. And then also, even if we feel pretty confident in our self-worth, sometimes people pleasing is just as an effort to keep up these unrealistic standards that we have for ourselves. So we may think like, I feel pretty good about myself, but because I think I'm up here, I have to stay up here. And to do that means that I am also in the people pleasing cycle. Yeah. So yes, self-worth is tied up into that from a variety of different avenues.
Yeah. I feel like this conversation, you say something and I'm like, ooh, that sounds like me, or like, ooh, yeah. I saw that in my past self. I am very proud to say that I'm a person who keeps promises to herself. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. But I feel like that also expands to everybody else. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to get it done. I'm a woman of integrity. Yep. And it's almost like, as you were describing, like I have a great self-worth for myself, but like now I'm also keeping myself on this pedestal for whatever reason, right? Like this is not a therapy session for me and you, but for whatever reason. And that's a big epiphany that I need to have. And I think anyone else who's in a similar situation should have, so that we can kind of take a step back and get back to our center.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like honestly one of the harder patterns, like when I talk about like my role as a therapist, to break are ones that are working well.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, ooh, we talk about people pleasing often as like, this is harming me, right? Or this is really keeping me stuck. Yes. And for those of us who have like a sense of high achieving, it keeps us where we want to be, but the cost is still the same. Right. And so that is really hard pattern to break, because it's like, oh, but it's working. It's like, yeah, it's been reinforced. You're doing it really well. You are high achieving at people pleasing, but that is in fact also related to why you have high anxiety. But yes, high achieving people, there's a high correlation with high anxiety. And that's likely due to the overwhelm, the sense of responsibility, and the constant need to prove yourself or keep yourself at this unrealistic standard.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think there is definitely a cortisol spike, in people who constantly do that. And if we don't have our health, nothing really matters, right? Like you said, we can't pour from an empty cup. If we can't get ourselves to a place where we are feeling good and feeling our best for ourselves, but there's no way we could do that for others. So I think it's really important to just make sure that we're always coming back to that center.
Are you loving this episode so far? Well, the money and life level up conversations never end in the City Girl Savings community. Visit citygirlsavings.com for instant access to resources that help you budget, level up your money mindset, and so much more. And make sure you stay up to date with CGS by following us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at City Girl Savings.
What do you think, or what would you recommend for women who feel guilty about that? Especially, I know we talked about like people pleasing with those we love, but I know a sense of guilt or shame for saying no or for turning down a person we care about is a hard thing to work through. So do you have any tips or guidance for women that may struggle with that?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is to acknowledge that like that's going to be there. So I know a lot of the times we want to get rid of guilt. We want to get rid of this feeling of feeling maybe selfish or feel shame because we're doing something new, especially if it feels like it doesn't align with who we are, what our values are. But that is going to be there because you are unlearning. So not to run away from it, but to increase your self-talk and remind yourself that I'm only feeling guilty because this is new, not because it is bad. Right. And so that reminder helps us continue to push through, because the positive effects that we're going to get from taking care of ourselves first are going to be the reinforcement we need to keep doing it. But we have to get through that initial hump of, oh no. And I had to do this a lot with my young kids. Like, can I leave the house? Like, people are going to think I'm a bad mom if I'm like out at a concert or having dinner or doing something. And once I pushed through that guilt and realized, wow, that night out with my friends really brought me back to myself, right? I experienced a lot of joy. I felt a lot of relaxation, peace, just myself again, pre-mom, right? And was able to connect with that part of my identity again. In fact, when I came home, I was a better mom, right? I was more engaged. I was less irritable. I needed that reset and that recharge. And so saying no to an activity so that you can sit at home on the couch and read a good book that you've been wanting to read may initially bring up a lot of guilt, but man, you're going to feel great when you're reading that book and being like, I've really missed this. This feels good.
I feel like that's such great advice, because you're going to feel what you feel, right? Like the feeling is going to be there. You really hit the nail on the head with that, but it's okay to feel that. It's okay that that feeling is there. Push through, because it's going to be worth it.
Yes. And then, okay, I'll say this, like sometimes when I like want to be a little spicy with myself too, I'll say like shrinking myself or losing myself is exactly what oppressive systems want from me.
Oh,
Right. And
yes.
I refuse to let them win. Right. The like petty,
Yes.
the competitive part of me says every time that I do something for myself, I will feel more empowered. And I envision it as just like a big middle finger to any person or system that wants less for me. Right. That
Yeah.
wants me to feel overwhelmed, that wants me to feel bogged down, that wants me to feel stressed all the time. Choosing me and choosing joy and release and freedom feels revolutionary.
Yeah, well, it is. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to think, well, it's just me and this is a whole system. I can't
Yep.
fight the whole system, but empowered people empower people.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
it's a ripple
Absolutely.
effect.
It
So
is.
yeah, I love that you said that because it's not about like creating this big drastic change within our society. It's about creating that change within yourself and the impacts that could have on the people around you, on your clients, on your friends, on your community. And I think that's how, as a collective, things change, right? It does have to start with one person.
Yes. And we're talking about overwhelm right now, right? We're feeling so overwhelmed systemically as well that, yes, like when we need something to ground us, if we can say, I'm just going to focus on myself, liberating myself, empowering myself, taking good care of myself, that yes, that has the ripple effects.
And I think that also is where guilt can play a role, right? Because you can also, I know I have these thoughts with myself, like you can feel guilty for like, okay, well, let me prioritize myself. But then you feel guilty for that because not everybody can do that or not everybody's in a position to do that. But you almost have to separate the two, right? Because if I'm in the best position I can possibly be in, that could impact somebody else in a better way, other than both of us kind of staying down and depressed and what the system wants.
Exactly. Right. And like you said, empowered people empower people. Right. And so by you taking care of yourself, by me taking care of myself, that allows me to extend a hand in the ways that I can, right, in my
Yes.
sphere of influence and empower somebody else, whether that's my children, my partner, my students, my clients, anybody listening to this episode, right? Like just extending that hand and pulling others up along with us.
Definitely. And speaking of clients, from the work you do with your clients, are there any like practical strategies you can share with myself and listeners, or even like daily practices that someone can start doing on a small scale to honor their own needs and ideally without the guilt? But if the guilt is there, just knowing you got to push through it.
Yeah. So I said this before in terms of starting small, and that's really like what we want to focus on. So I know that there might be like grand things that we want to reclaim, and we'll get there, right? But right now, going back to that list, starting small, adding maybe some affirmations where you can overcome some of those negative thoughts or the feelings of guilt, right? Like, I deserve rest. I deserve to take care of myself. I am worthy of choosing the activities that I want to engage in. And even something that we didn't touch on yet, another aspect of people pleasing is like avoiding conflict. And so, something like, I can have this tough conversation, right? Those empowering mantras as you are kind of like combating the negative thoughts, I find those to be really, really helpful. And truly, what's going to be the most impactful in this journey is more evidence that you are okay, that your body is okay, that your nervous system is okay when you are taking care of yourself.
Mm,
Because what we've learned as people pleasers is that, like, oh no, danger, like, don't do that. Don't focus on yourself, right? Always focus on others' needs. So the more evidence we can give our bodies that, like, oh, I said no to that, and like everybody's okay. Nothing went wrong. I'm still good. People still think I'm a responsible human, right? Like everybody was fed, whatever it is, right? The more evidence we give ourselves that like it will be okay, and in fact, you feel better, that is going to be the most helpful thing we can do because then it just snowballs from there. Oh, I said no to that thing. Let me say no to this thing and see how that works out.
right.
Oh, I tackled this tough conversation. Let me tell this person how I feel over here and see how that lands, right? And we just keep trying and we will find that our biggest fear likely is not going to come true.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because the mind is a powerful thing and it can create scenarios that don't even exist and never will exist, but we can convince ourselves that they do. But that's such great advice. It's like start with that one. Just start with one, say no once, just do that one and give yourself that evidence that the world is still there. Everything is still fine. Nobody's mad at you. Nobody, is
Yep.
disappointed and
Mhm.
keep going from there.
Yeah. And even
Yeah.
if they are disappointed or are mad, is it something that you can handle? Right? Because sometimes
Yeah.
we're so worried about the outcome or how the other person might feel that we neglect how it's going to make us feel. And
Yeah.
so if we feel like, wow, that felt really good to get off my chest, but the other person is mad, how the other person feel may not actually weigh on us as heavy as we think it will be because
Right.
we feel so good having done the thing or said the thing that we needed to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the City Girl Savings community, all of this really focuses on financial wellness, but there's so many correlations between finances and mental health and the mindset. I'm curious to hear how you see people pleasing showing up in maybe your clients or just people's money habits that are in your orbit. I would think like overspending or giving too much, giving money you don't have, or just avoiding boundaries with finances, are just some things I can think of. But yeah, I would love to know how it shows up in money habits when it comes to people pleasing.
Sure, absolutely. And you're right. Like there's going to be a correlation there too. And it also can kind of be tied up to a sense of self worth as well. And that like we may feel as if we have to financially spend a lot in order for people to like us or for
Mhm.
people to want to engage with us. Right. And so that might be the overspending or the being kind of loose with our boundaries based on our budget or maybe I want to be validated as a mom and say like I want to feel like a good mom so I got to buy my kids all these things or the newest thing or
Yeah.
whatever it is because I want them to be happy and I want them to like me and think that I'm good, right? Or we might just avoid setting boundaries because we're trying to like keep up with an aesthetic, right? Like that kind of goes with self-worth too of like, oh, well, everybody else has this and I need to also feel like I have this in order to feel good about myself, right? Or
Right.
based on the communities that we're in, if we want them to accept us, we may feel like we have to have I don't know, outfits or bags or go on vacations or whatnot, like more of material things that really at the end of the day are not going to be the markers for whether we are good or not or whether people like us. But we often try to use finances to prove our self worth or prove our goodness or so that people will love us.
I think those are some great examples because sometimes it's hard to connect the two, right? Like people pleasing and overspending or people pleasing and your money decisions, right? But they can be intertwined if you're not aware of them. And so all of those examples are great. And especially, a mom with her kids. A lot of my clients have kids and some of the things we constantly reiterate are what habits or what decisions, what actions are we teaching our kids, right? Like if you're constantly giving into them or constantly giving them what they need, especially to the detriment of your own financial situation right now, what lesson is that instilling in them that they will have to work through when they're older?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a great question, right? Reflection question, because all parents like want to instill those values, right, for their
Right.
kids of like financial literacy and just like feeling comfortable managing their own finances. And then also just like, yeah, we want them to be successful and healthy and happy people. So then how are we modeling that through our own behaviors? Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm sure I know it stems way past finances too. It could be with food decisions
Yep.
or, yeah, like education decisions or the people you date. Like it
Yes.
expands to all areas.
All areas. Yeah. So we have to start now, right? Start start it because it'll snowball, right? It absolutely will extend. Another example that I thought of too, though, like in terms of like avoiding conflict, I can think of situations where friends are at lunch or something and you're always the one picking up the tab, right?
Mm,
Because you don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation of like who's going to split the bill or if somebody owes you money, you don't want to have that conversation, that hard one of like, hey, like, where's the money that you've owed me? Because you don't want to initiate like just harmful feelings or bad feelings feelings between you and that person, that can get in the way of your finances and of your budgeting because you are avoiding those really tough conversations.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have plenty of conversations with clients about, I only got a salad, but, the bill came and I didn't want to say anything. Everyone was fine with splitting it evenly. And it's like, sometimes you have to have those tough conversations or put yourself in those uncomfortable situations so that you can actually feel the way you deserve to feel, which is equal, or that you paid your part, not for everybody else.
Everybody else's. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to people pleasing, obviously setting boundaries and having healthy boundaries is important, right?
Yeah.
So let's say someone listening is ready to kind of work through their people pleasing, but maybe they struggle with setting boundaries or even knowing where to start to have healthy boundaries. How can someone identify having healthy boundaries or what healthy boundaries would look like for them dealing with different situations of people pleasing?
Yeah, sure. I feel like there's a lot. Boundaries is like the therapist's like buzzword, right? We love a conversation about boundaries. So one of the benefits of like social media or just like podcasts or like these conversations is that I think there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of content out there on boundaries. And so I think that there is a saturation of materials that we could go and educate ourselves on, like, what are the different types of boundaries? What are healthy boundaries? As a systemic therapist, we often talk a lot about, we want our boundaries to be open. And what that means is that like, we want to have influence from the external world, but we don't want them to be like no boundaries where the external world kind of takes over our own needs, right? So we want kind of a fluid, flexible exchange of energy or of emotions or of communication between ourselves and others. And so that's kind of always the goal that I'm looking for when I'm talking about healthy boundaries, because that's going to look different for everyone, right? But like, are your boundaries open? We don't want them to be closed, right? We want you to have meaningful connections with other people. We want you to take influence from others. But what's that easy flow of connection with others? And that, are you getting your needs met in the same way that you're feeling like you are supporting others? But I think one of the books that I always recommend on boundaries is Nidra Tawwab's book on Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And so I think he does a really great job of naming the different types of boundaries, how to set boundaries, and how boundaries can set us free, right? In every aspect of our life. So I really would encourage your listeners to check out that resource because boundaries are a necessary component in people pleasing. And I think there's a lot of good information out there that can help us.
Awesome. I'll definitely link to that book in the show notes because I think that's something that we all can benefit from. Even if we do already have healthy boundaries, I think the learning and the knowledge should never really stop, right? So.
And honestly, because a lot of us, we're pretty aware that healthy boundaries shouldn't be like so fluid, but a lot of us think that our closed boundaries are healthy. And so it's really interesting to kind of dive in of like, what actually is a healthy boundary? What does that look like? And it's not one that is completely closed off. And it's not one that is completely just like invisible, right? It doesn't really exist.
That's a good perspective because it's very easy for people to kind of think that, well, I'm doing this right. Or, oh, no, this is healthy. And like, you really convinced yourself of that, right? But you don't really have that evidence just yet. And so I think seeking that evidence can give you that confirmation you need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can always learn. We should always be learning and growing.
Always. So when this episode is released, it's going to be the end of the year. And obviously, this is such a good time for reflection and assessments and kind of closing out chapters so we can move into the new year feeling the best we can. As we close out the year, what's one self-reflection question or exercise that you would recommend for women to just help them move into 2026, like with a stronger sense of peace and self-trust and easing up on the people pleasing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would recommend that all women focus on this question. What parts of me have I lost in trying to please others? What parts of me am I no longer willing to sacrifice? So kind of two of those questions and reflecting. Maybe you set them up in a chart format, right? On one side, what have I lost? And what am I no longer willing to sacrifice? And so then sitting with the feelings that come up as you're doing that exercise. So you might feel sad, grief, anger, guilt, but then framing it as I'm no longer willing to sacrifice should bring up a sense of empowerment, right? I'm making a choice. This is something that is important to me. So although I may be feeling these feelings, I am empowered to make a change. I'm empowered to reclaim what has been lost. And then, like we talked about before, empowered to help other women reclaim their power too.
Oh, that's a great exercise. And I'm so glad that you touched on you're going to feel what you feel as you do this. And it's okay. Like, this is just the reality of the situation. How do we move past it? Right. And we can't avoid it. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. We can't pretend we're not losing parts of ourselves, but we can acknowledge it. And we can say, what am I willing to no longer sacrifice? And I think, to your point, that's a very empowering way to move through this and come out on top.
Yeah.
Great. That's a great suggestion. So before I let you go, what's one mindset shift you wish every woman would carry into the new year when it comes to pleasing themselves over others?
Okay. I hope that every woman could know and truly embody how powerful they are. Because like truly, when I think about all that we do, and then we've listed the many roles and we probably didn't even scratch the surface, right? In that, all that we accomplished, we have been socialized to silence ourselves, to hide our talents or minimize our talents, to put our needs aside. That even if just for one day, we all could just embody the power that we have and just did what was best for us without thinking about anything else. I always think about like, wow, how much we could literally change everything, how we could change the world, how things would be such a better place. And so I would love for women moving into this next year to just really remind ourselves that like our needs matter. Our needs are important. And what I do for others is important as well. But most importantly, that you matter and you deserve to take up way more space than you ever have before.
Oh, I love that. That's incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
So, Jamila, where can listeners connect with you if they want to just stay up to date and soak in all of the amazing advice you give? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on my website, which is holcombcounselingandconsulting.com. I know it's a mouthful, but that will have a list of all of the services that I provide. And if you wanted to contact me through email, you can do so there. But more informally, if you're wanting to follow me on social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, and Facebook, all under the username at dr.jamila.holcomb. You will find, more education, entertainment, and just overall kind of empowering content that is geared towards our collective healing and liberation.
Oh, yes. Well, I will link to all of those links in the show notes because we are here for all of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun and actually like empowering for myself. Sometimes talking it out loud, I'm like, yeah, I need to go take up more space.
Absolutely. And thank you for coming on because like I said, I've had so many epiphanies just in this conversation as it relates to myself. So I have no doubt that others listening will feel the same. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me be the money coach in your ear today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the City Girl Savings Podcast and you feel empowered and motivated to take the next step in the journey to your dream life. Remember, if someone like me, a millennial who loves to travel, new experiences, and iced coffees can live a life they love on a budget, you can too.